All right, so we are at the August Wellness Chat here at Bailey Chase, and I am Chaplain Bill Ferris. And we are talking this month about spiritual wellness, spiritual fitness. What in the world is that? It is one of the 7 dimensions of wellness. So let's actually look at it. Here's my definitions and the difference even between wellness and fitness. The spiritual wellness is getting your soul to a point that it is well. And it is generally considered and defined by almost everyone as a sense of meaning and purpose and connecting to something greater than yourself. And it encompasses what I like to call our software, our programming, our beliefs, our core values, our morals and ethics and where we get them from, our coping styles. How do we define reality? What is our sense of hope if we have any sense of hope? And definitely, what is our sense of self? The difference between then fitness and wellness, in my respect, and I think this goes with physical fitness as well, is the idea of actually practicing what you preach. Actually working it out. Right? Actually doing it, and doing it to the point that we turn those actions into habits. So that they become part of us. So what does this look like? And I'm going to borrow some slides from my Marine buddies. This is something that we used in Iraq. You can see the multinational corps of Iraq in the upper left. So this was for Army and Marine forces while I was serving there. And this is from a large presentation called Warrior, Resilience, and Thriving. And this is slide number 33. So, but it's this idea of our software, our thinking, and how we think affects then our emotions. And then our emotions are the fuel, right? The energy of what we do. Does that make sense? And that's why we talk about talk therapy, because the idea of changing how you think can change your emotions. And by changing your emotions, changing what fuel you fuel your body with, that changes your actions. So as an example, they are talking about a victim mentality versus a warrior mentality. And the victim in the red is somebody that after a traumatic event is like, this is the worst thing that could have possibly happened to me. I have a right to be angry. So of course that's going to lead to anger and rage and resentment and eventually depression and panic. And then those emotions are going to fuel actions like avoiding rehab, not doing what you need to do to get better, and being argumentative about it. Right? And eventually, just kind of isolating yourself from the world and others because they don't understand you. But if you take on the warrior mentality and you change your software, your core beliefs, and you say, you know what, this could have been so much worse. It really could have been. Yeah, I got blown up, but I'm still alive. I have a buddy that I served with that got hit in the eye by a sniper from the top of the minaret to where most of my guys were on a daily basis, which was the provincial capital of Al Anbar province in Ramadi, Iraq. And this bullet hit him, and if it would have been a millimeter in any direction, he would have died. And think about that, a millimeter in any direction, he would have died, but because it went straight through the middle of the eye, he lived. Now he's had horrible effects because he doesn't even live in a metro area, so getting the VA to pay for rural doctors and dealing with all the healthcare has been a nightmare. However, it could have been so much worse. Right? He's still with him. He still can be dad. He still can be husband. What a great thing for the rest of his life. Amen? And so he, by then changing that software, that thinking it could have been so much worse, he then has gratitude. He has relief. he is appreciative of life and can accept the reality of life that, hey, this is better than what it could have been. And then because of that, he's motivated, no matter how difficult it is, to do the rehabilitation, to get the health care he needs, and to be social, to be dad, to be husband, to be involved with other people, to even talk to other soldiers who have come back and tell them you too can change your thinking, which changes your emotions, your fuel, which changes your actions. So then how do we assess, and I'm going to use this slide twice just to warn you. We're going to look at it once, then we're going to talk about forgiveness, because that seems to be something worth talking about. And then we're going to look at it again. So on this first round, I want you to look at particularly the right-hand side and the yellow, orange, and red, to what does spiritual fitness not look like? Well, it looks like somebody who is neglecting or losing or just flat out not living your meaning and purpose in life. Does that make sense? That's a way to assess whether you're spiritually well or spiritually fit. Also, the idea of hope. You become less hopeful or hold little hope or just flat out don't even believe in hope. You make poor moral decisions, or you make them routinely, or you just flat out do extreme immoral behaviors. You have difficulty forgiving yourself and others, and that's key, isn't it? And that, or you're unable, or you even get to the point where forgiveness isn't even an option. You've just given up on that. And because of that, you're less respectful of people of other faiths, of other beliefs, or other football teams. Right? You just don't like them. And you go from less respectful to strong disrespect to just complete disrespect of other people. And because of that, you're neglecting or disregarding or abandoning your core values, your beliefs. You are not practicing what you preach. So let's look at an example. And I picked this one because I thought it was worth talking about, easy to talk about, but also needed to talk about, because we often have this core belief and value that we do believe in forgiveness, especially in a supposedly Christian nation, Christian culture. Christianity in itself is defined by forgiveness. But do we know how to do it? What does it actually look like to practice it, to work it out? So when I looked at forgiveness in the Bible, in both the Hebrew and the Greek words for forgiveness, it is simply a financial term. Right? Your debt is forgiven. But this ends up being utilized then on a human basis. This idea of when you forgive somebody, you get to the point that they don't owe me anything anymore. And note how we talk about forgiveness and forgetting. It does not say to forget. If you were a banker and you have a promissory note, right? You have an expectation that that person's going to pay you every month, right? It's going to pay you back as agreed upon, right? So when we don't forgive somebody, what do? We hold the promissory note. We hold that expectation that you owe me something, and you're going to pay me back at some later date. That's what unforgiveness looks like. You're going to have to pay me back. An expectation. But when we forgive them is when we get to the point where we can stamp debt forgiven on that promissory note and file it away and no longer have it in our random access memory, right? No longer have an expectation that they owe us anything. That's what forgiveness looks like. And how often do we practice that? Because I bet many of you, like myself, probably have a few things cooking in our head where, oh, that person owes me something, right? They owe me respect, or they owe me money, or they owe me, whatever. But when we get to the point where they don't owe us anything, that's when our soul is well and maybe even fit to the point where we're practicing forgiveness on a regular basis, to the point where it's a habit. We don't expect anything from anybody. They don't owe us anything. That is true forgiveness, and that is true spiritual fitness. So now let's look at the green. How do we assess ourselves to be spiritually fit? It's going to look like we are engaged, not only knowing, but engaged in what our life's meaning and purpose is. Are you all familiar with Viktor Frankl? He was a psychiatrist, Holocaust survivor, and all of his family members were taken to various camps. He himself went to 3 different ones. He started at Buchenwald, then he was transferred to Auschwitz, and then lastly he was transferred to Dachau. And in the meantime, they killed all of his family members. But they kept him alive because he was a psychiatrist, which meant he cared about his people and was actually keeping them hopeful. That he helped them have meaning and purpose. And the idea of even chanting their prayer, Shema, O Israel, they chanted that like we would maybe say the Lord's Prayer or Amazing Grace or something on the way to the gas chambers. That's what they did. And because of that, they kept him alive, and he wrote a book, Man's Search for Meaning. And it is actually, and developed something called logos therapy. It is actually kind of the foundation of today's, what we call positive psychology. And so he thinks, and obviously most everybody else now thinks, because the whole positive psychology movement has come from Viktor Frankl and Man's Search for Meaning. And then eventually picked up, if you're writing this down, by Martin Seligman, and particularly studied at the University of Pennsylvania. And that's where the Army Resilience course comes from, UPenn.
Awesome.
And so he says it starts with knowing your meaning and purpose in life. And obviously that's spiritual, or if you'd like the larger term, existential. So Viktor Frankl, and why do I like Viktor Frankl? Well, I gave you enough already because I like his thoughts. But my Army battalion that I served with in Iraq is the same battalion that liberated Viktor Frankl on April 29th, 1945 in Dachau.
That's
So I have
amazing.
a personal connection. So I like his stuff very much. So we know and are engaged in our life, what our life means and its purpose. And because of that, we have hope. Right?
Yeah.
Even if you have some grave disease, can you be part of a experiential study? And does that give meaning and purpose and hope to others, and thus give you meaning and purpose and hope? So even at that point, you can do these things. And then what's your foundation here should help you to make moral decisions and do what is right instead of doing what is wrong. And because of that, you're able to do what we just talked about, which is to forgive. To forgive first yourself, and then to forgive others. And to make it eventually, work it out, and make it a habit. And that's what fitness looks like. And because of that, because you're able to forgive others and understand that others have been through just as many difficult things as you have been, sometimes maybe a whole lot worse than you've been through, you can be respectful of other people and other faiths and other cultures. And even, as we were talking about Sunday, people that are outsiders, right? One of the strong interests is when you're the local person. This is your place, and other people come in. You don't always value and respect them and treat them well. But can you do that? Well, if you're fit, you can. And lastly, that's gonna show up that you are engaged in actually practicing what you preach regarding your core values and your core beliefs. So you talk about forgiveness, but you actually do it. That's what spiritual fitness looks like. Amen? So, do we have questions? Anybody like to ask a question?
I just have a comment.
Yeah.
I don't know that I need that.
Okay, well, for the video.
Okay. Oh, I see. No, I've always had so much admiration and for those who have gone through such horrible things in their lives.
Yes?
Losing
Kids,
a child.
losing parents,
and
losing
then
soldiers.
being able to forgive the person who has done that.
Yes.
To me, that gives you, it's beyond. I'm having a hard time understanding that, but I see where when you clear your mind and soul and self of those things, it does give you hope.
Yes.
And
I
it
think-
gives you, a purpose, as we're saying, what is our purpose for being here?
Yeah,
So it all makes sense.
good. Thank you, Ellie. Any other comments?
And
or-
even admiration for those who are going through a horrible disease and overcome it.
Right?
And you look at, I have a sister who has had cancer, all kinds of cancers, and has almost overcome them all. We're still fighting with lung cancer.
Okay.
But still, and she's just as strong. I mean, it's just amazing, to
Yes.
see, and we've all been there to support her, of course, but it really and truly is something that, it does make you stop and think.
Yeah. So I can tease maybe a future lecture
Yeah.
that I can then teach on something called post-traumatic growth, and that how your spiritual development, which is awesome, often comes from a dark place of why, Lord, like shaking your fists and going, what in the hell, Lord, is going on here? And when you do that, then that leads to growing and actually not just rebounding, but becoming a new and better person. So I can tease that a little because I took that out. I thought this was enough. And I took that out because there's a lot with that idea, but just to tease it a little, that when we go through very hard times, it is often the spiritual struggle. And when we can get our soul kind of right and, get right with God, why do these bad things happen? And then get right with ourselves, then we can truly get right with others.
Yeah, I like the way you tied that in. I like the way you define spiritual fitness. I was curious.
Yes,
Yeah, and I like that.
and different than
Makes
wellness,
sense. Yeah,
because wellness
Yes.
was pretty well established of meaning,
Exactly.
purpose, sense of something greater than yourself.
but to keep it fit, you gotta act.
You got to work on it, right? Which is what you got to do when you're lifting weights or
Correct.
swimming,
Make it a
right?
routine.
Is to
Yeah.
actually do it.
Good job.
Yeah,
That was very, very interesting.
yeah.
I like the correlation to practice,
Yes,
the idea of,
orthopraxy instead
yes.
of orthodoxy.
yes.
Do you guys know those terms? Orthodoxy is standard core beliefs. Orthopraxy, standard core practices.
Are these slides available to us?
That's why we're recording it. We're hoping to put it on the 900 channel.
No, I mean
If you want them,
physically.
Della,
Yeah.
I can give them to you.
Physically, yes,
She wants to hold them in her hand.
yeah.
But I hand wrote a little something